Hi there everybody, my name's Adam Bushnell and I'm an author. Now the story I'm going to tell you today is probably my favourite story in the whole world. This is the story that made me want to become an author when I was a young reader myself. And it's a story called Perseus and Medusa. Now Medusa, as you probably know, was a gorgon. She was a creature with living vipers, living snakes for hair, and her eyes had a deadly power. They were able to turn anything it looked at into stone. Now that process is called to be petrified. And this is something I picked up in a place called Mother Shipton's Cave. Now in Mother Shipton's Cave in Harrogate, there is a pool of water, and any object you place into that pool of water becomes calcified. It becomes petrified. And in this box here, I have a petrified teddy bear. Now imagine any living thing that came across Medusa could end up like this, could end up petrified into stone. Now this story starts off in a place called Argos, not the shop, but a city in ancient Greece. Now in this city there was a king whose name was King Acrisius. King Acrisius had just become a proud father, but he was a very superstitious king, and so he ordered that his little baby girl, which he named Danae, should be taken off to a soothsayer, to a fortune teller, and have her fortune, her future predicted. So the fortune teller felt the lumps and the bumps on the baby's head and said, "This baby will grow up into a beautiful woman, and she will go on to have her own baby. You will be a grandfather, and this grandchild will kill you." King Acrisius said, "What? Never, never will I be killed by my own grandchild. I tell you what, I know what to do." He snatched the baby away and he took Danae back to the palace. When Danae was old enough that, well, people started noticing her beauty, it was time to lock her away. So King Acrisius built a huge bronze tower and locked her inside. Day after day, Danae spent her days alone. A hatch would open up and in would go her breakfast. Then the hatch would be closed. The hatch would open up, the breakfast things would be taken away, and then the lunch things delivered. The same with her dinner, and the only daylight that Danae ever saw was when the hatch opened and the hatch closed. Danae grew into a beautiful woman, living all alone in the bronze tower. Now Zeus, the king of the gods, noticed this beautiful girl locked in a tall bronze tower, and he decided to pay her a visit. He turned himself into golden rain and dripped down onto the roof of the bronze tower. He dripped inside, and then he turned himself into a great golden man and stood before Danae. He said, "My name is Zeus, the king of the gods, and I am here to give you a present. I'm going to give you a baby." He clicked his fingers and boom, there was a baby right there in Danae's womb. Zeus then turned round and said, "See you later." He turned himself back into golden rain that instead of dripping down, dripped up and went to the top of Mount Olympus to the rest of the gods and their home. Meanwhile, Danae gave birth to a little baby boy. She decided to call him Perseus. Now King Acrisius himself came to deliver the food that evening. He opened up the hatch, collected the lunch dishes, but before he put in the dinner, he heard a baby crying. How could this be? He opened up the door of the tower, he looked inside and he shrieked when he saw what was within. "Ah!" he said, a baby boy. This cannot be." He grabbed his own daughter Danae. He grabbed the little baby Perseus. He stuffed them into a sea chest. He closed it, he locked it, and he hurled the sea chest off a mountain so that it plunged into the water and fell to the depths of the bottom of the sea. "Well, I didn't kill them," said King Acrisius. "It's nothing to do with me. It's up to Poseidon, the god of the sea, to decide what happens to them now. It's not my fault if they die." And sure enough, as that sea chest was sinking, Poseidon, the god of the sea, saw that sea chest, and he knew that Zeus, his brother, had made this baby boy Perseus, which made Poseidon the boy's uncle. Poseidon wasn't going to let his nephew die, so Poseidon scooped up the sea chest and put it on a little island nearby. Now on that island there was a fisherman called Dictys, who was returning back from a hard day's labour on the seas, fishing for his evening meal. He saw the sea chest, he unlocked it, he opened it, and he found a beautiful girl and her baby boy inside. He said, are you all right? Let me help you, come back to my house, I'll look after you. And that's exactly what Dictys did. He looked after Danae, and he looked after young Perseus, and Perseus began to grow up into a fine young man. Now Perseus was faster than the other boys at running. He was better at jumping, better at swimming, better at everything. Don't forget, this was a son of Zeus. Perseus became so good at sports that he wanted to compete in the Olympic Games, which were invented in ancient Greece. It was a happy life on that island with Dictys, but the problem was there was another king, the king of this island called King Polydectes. Now King Polydectes had taken a shine to Danae. He went to visit her most days and couldn't understand why she would want to live in a simple fisherman's house when she could be living in the palace with him. And every day he nagged and nagged and nagged and begged her to marry him, but she refused. She'd fallen in love with the fisherman Dictys. Perseus got sick of King Polydectes nagging his mother, and so one day he bravely strode into the palace and said, "You will leave my mother alone. Stop coming to our home. Stay inside your own palace." King Polydectes sat on his throne and said, "Very well, I will leave your mother alone if you bring me the head of the gorgon, Medusa." Perseus said, "I'll do it," and stormed out of the palace. He swore an oath before everybody there. And when he returned home, he told Dictys and his mother Danae what he'd promised, and they were both aghast and horrified. "Why have you made such an oath?" said his mother. "Do you know what Medusa is?" asked Dictys. "I've got no idea," said Perseus. Nor do I know where to find her." Dictys explained that Perseus had once been a beautiful girl that attracted the attention of Poseidon, the king of the gods, who came ashore and took Medusa to the temple of Athena. And once there, he'd been a bit rude with her in that temple, and well, Athena wasn't very happy about this rudeness going on in her temple. So when Poseidon went back into the sea, Athena visited the temple and cursed this beautiful Medusa. Athena turned her into a gorgon. Now a gorgon is a creature with horrible scaly skin, with tusks of a boar, with claws of bronze and wings of bronze, and unlike other gorgons, Medusa was turned into a creature that could turn people to stone, that could petrify them with one look from her ugly face, and vipers, poisonous snakes, were there instead of hair. And so Medusa, once turned into this terrible gorgon, sought out the other gorgons, her two gorgon sisters, Stheno and Euryale, and together the three gorgon sisters lived on an island far away. Well, once Dictys had explained all of this to Perseus, Perseus rubbed his chin and said, "I must go. I must find the gorgon Medusa." Danae wailed and Dictys cried, and Perseus was off. He travelled far and far away. Dictys had given him his fishing boat, and Perseus decided to go and see the three grey sisters. Only they would know where to find Medusa. They were fortune tellers famed across the whole of ancient Greece. And so Perseus took directions and sailed the boat and dropped the anchor when he got to the island of the Grey Sisters. Once there, he went sneaking over the island. He found the terrible Grey Sisters inside a cave there, and these sisters were so old that they only had one eyeball between them and one tooth between them to eat their food. Now, they were busy fighting over the eyeball, and they were busy scrabbling over the tooth. So Perseus went sneaking into the cave, and he snatched the eyeball from their gnarled and twisted fingers. The Grey Sisters wailed, "Who's there? Who's Who's got our eye? Perseus said, It's me, Perseus, and I will give you your eyeball back if you tell me where I can find the Gorgon Medusa. Well, the Grey Sisters spat and wailed and vowed that they would never tell, but Perseus threatened to throw the eye into the sea where it would be lost forever. And so the Grey Sisters gave Perseus directions. They sent him to the island of pink flowers off the coast of Africa. Perseus then flicked the eyeball back into the cave and watched as they scrabbled over the eye. Perseus went back to his boat and made his way towards Africa. He slept on that boat. It was a still and quiet night, and while he was sleeping, he was visited by Athena and by Hermes, who were his half-brother and sister. These were the children of Zeus, and powerful gods at that. And these gods brought Perseus gifts. Hermes gave Perseus some winged sandals so that he could fly straight there and fly straight back. Athena gave Perseus a sickle of sharp bronze that could cut through anything. She also gave him a shield with a surface so reflective that it was like a mirror. And finally, she gave him a satchel to hold Medusa's head. These gifts were laid before him, and Perseus woke up blinking and unsure whether these two mysterious figures were real. They whispered a plan to Perseus, and then the two gods were off. Perseus tied on the winged sandals. He put the satchel around his body. He held the shield in one hand and the sickle in the other. And as he was about to set off, Hermes zoomed back and gave him one last gift. He gave him a helmet of invisibility. He said, I almost forgot, brother, and then flew away. Brother? Perseus said, well, these were gods. Surely they're mistaken. And he watched as they disappeared into the sky above. It took a little while for Perseus to get the hang of the winged sandals, but eventually he did. He left the boat and he sailed into the sky instead of the sea. He raced through the skies until he arrived at the island of pink flowers. This island was decorated with many statues, frozen, petrified by Medusa. Perseus sailed over their heads until he arrived at the cave of the Gorgon sisters. Once there, he used the shiny mirror to look into its reflective surface so that he didn't have to look directly at the Gorgon Medusa. He saw the sisters were sleeping and he flew slowly over their heads, all the while looking at their terrible, terrible features. But the snakes in Medusa's hair could sense that somebody was there. They hissed so loudly that they woke Medusa up. She screeched and she scratched at the sky. But Perseus was invisible and soared over their heads. Steno and Euryale woke up too, and they desperately searched for Perseus. But Perseus used the mirror, used the sickle, and sliced off Medusa's head. He then picked it up, dropped it into the satchel, and flew away as quickly as he could, while Steno and Euryale shrieked and howled in anger, in rage, and in sadness for the loss of their sister Medusa. Perseus, meanwhile, if he'd have stopped, he would have seen that something beautiful emerged from Medusa. The blood that poured from the stump of Medusa's neck poured forth a beautiful creature, a child of Medusa. It was a white horse with wings. Pegasus was born from Medusa's dead body and flew off into the sky to have adventures elsewhere. Meanwhile, Perseus was flying along that African coastline and he suddenly was passing the land of Ethiopia when he noticed that there was somebody chained to a rock in the middle of the sea. Perseus went over, took off the helmet of invisibility and revealed himself to a beautiful African princess named Andromeda. Andromeda said, "Who are you?" Perseus said, "I'm Perseus, and what are you doing here?" She said, "Well, my father is king of that land over there, and he's upset the Poseidon, the god of the sea, by saying that I was more beautiful than all of the nymphs of the sea. And so a sea creature called Cetus is being sent here to eat me. I'm a sacrifice to Poseidon." And Perseus said, "Well, It just so happens that I am the nephew of Poseidon. I've just found out that I'm half a god, and so I'll be able to stop that sea creature, sort things out with Poseidon, and rescue you. Sound good?" Andromeda said, "Well, if you can, that would be amazing." Perseus put the helmet of invisibility back on. Suddenly, the sea began to froth, and the sea began to foam, and rising from the bottom of the sea was a terrible sea creature called Cetus. Perseus swooped down towards the sea creature, and with a sharpened sickle, he hacked, and he thwacked, and he sliced, and he chopped, and he diced until all that was left was floating sushi on the water. He then used the sickle to hack away the chains for Andromeda to be freed. He took away the helmet, he scooped her up, and flew her back to her palace. Andromeda's parents were delighted with Perseus, delighted that he made peace with Poseidon, the god of the sea, and had rescued their daughter. And they declared that if he wanted to, he could marry her. Andromeda was happy with this arrangement. Perseus was happy with this arrangement, but somebody was not so happy. A man named Phineus had been promised to Andromeda, and Phineus raised an entire army who marched on the palace on Perseus's wedding day. They were intent on killing Perseus, but Perseus stopped them in their tracks by pulling Medusa's head and showing it to Phineus and his army. They were each turned to stone, petrified on the spot. So Perseus put the head back into his satchel, married Andromeda, said goodbye to his new parents-in-law, picked her up and flew her back to the island to introduce her to his mother and his stepdad. Danae and Dictys were delighted to meet Andromeda. Perseus then ordered that they should all go to the palace to go and see King Polydectes. That's exactly what they did. And when they got there, King Polydectes sneered and said, "Well, you're back then, are you? Did you bring me the head of the gorgon Medusa?" Perseus said, "Indeed I did. All those that love me, get behind me." And so everybody did. All that was left was King Polydectes on his throne. He sneered and said, "Show me then." Perseus opened the satchel, pulled out the head of Medusa, and showed it to King Polydectes, who was petrified on his throne. Perseus stepped out of the palace and hurled the head of Medusa into the sea, where it couldn't bother anybody again. But it was caught by Athena, who took it up to Mount Olympus and had it engraved upon her shield, where she still has Medusa's head to this day. Meanwhile, Perseus carried on with his ambition of wanting to join in with the Olympic Games. He was particularly good at throwing the discus, he discovered, after hurling Medusa's head. So every day he went down to the beach and he threw discus after discus after discus. His idea was that if he could get a discus to reach an island that he could see in the distance, then he knew he could become an Olympic champion. And one day he did manage to throw the discus, and it did manage to reach that island. And on the island was his grandfather, King Acrisius, who was picking flowers in his garden and didn't notice the discus spinning through the air towards him. Bang! It hit him over the head and he fell down dead. The soothsayer's prediction had come true. Perseus had killed his own grandfather, but he hadn't meant to. It was a total accident. Meanwhile, unlike most Greek heroes, Perseus and his beautiful Egyptian bride Andromeda got to live happily ever after. The end. I hope you like that story. It is my favourite in the whole wide world, and I hope you enjoyed it too. Okay, bye for now.